Let's talk to Jay in Virginia. Jay, you're live with Eric and V.
Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. What's up? What would you like to talk about?
I've been an atheist for about 2 years now. And despite that, I still find myself believing that consciousness has a supernatural component. This isn't something that I want to believe. I really can't choose my beliefs, but every time I'm presented with a specific thought experiment, I can't help come down on that side of it.
Well, can I walk you through a couple and see if maybe we can flesh that out a bit?
Sure.
Okay. So are you conscious right now?
Yes.
Are you conscious when you're sleeping?
To some degree, yes.
Okay. Are animals conscious?
I'm not sure, but I think that some are and some are probably not. So
what is your definition of consciousness? I'm trying to kind of start to plug in there. What makes something conscious to you?
For me, I guess something conscious, that's a really good question. I think it's just, I think there's more to it than just awareness of self.
Oh, sure. I've met plenty of, in working in special ed, I've taken care of plenty of children who are not aware of themselves and yet still conscious.
Right. And I've actually worked with special ed as well, and I would agree with that. And I think you could probably program some robots to be aware of themselves, but I wouldn't say that those would be conscious.
Measure of a man.
So let's see here. Let me give you my definition.
I'm sure.
And let's see if we can go from there. Yeah.
Okay.
So your consciousness is often used interchangeably when you're talking about the mind, and that is an emergent property of having a brain. So it's not actually something that, you know, there was never an intent towards it, but it is evolutionarily advantageous to be able to communicate, to be able to be social species. Excuse me. We see that in other animals. And so all of these different places of growth have given us the brains that we have. And, you know, you can see similarly, you know, in other social species, in dogs and dolphins and monkeys, you know, those kinds of things, and in elephants, right? So consciousness is kind of this strange, you know, emergent thing that happens. So at least we can start to narrow it down, right? I've never seen something without a brain conscious. You know, I've never seen a rock conscious. And by my understanding, those emergent properties of having a, you know, central nervous system and a brain, the working brain, I've not experienced or seen or any kind of consciousness outside of that. And so I'm left to conclude that consciousness is an entirely material thing. You know, oh, go ahead.
And I can follow your logic there. And I mean, it makes perfect sense to me why there's someone named Jay who believes the things he does in Virginia, who might even be calling the show. But for me, the stumbling block is the idea that I'm physically, you know, behind the wheel here, trapped in this person, and why there should be someone. And I know logically it doesn't make any sense at all. I know my position doesn't make any sense at all. Can I explain what is giving me so much trouble?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
If possible. Okay. I assume both of you are at least passively familiar with Star Trek.
More than passively.
V has been inducting me into Star Trek. I never watched Star Trek beforehand, and now I'm on season 3 of Voyager.
Yep. So yes, you're in good company.
In Star Trek, there's technology called a transporter, where people are on a ship, they beam the person down onto the planet and can beam people from the planet back up onto the ship. You know, physically move them from one space to another. when the very first series had people like this, there were people saying that, well, that's just a suicide pod, that anyone who steps on a pad is actually being, you know, their molecules are being ripped apart, they're being killed, and then just a clone is being made on the planet below. But
yeah. Isn't that amazing?
But even if it just exists as a thought experiment, the idea that everything that makes you, you know, all of your material, every atom where it is, every bit of energy that makes you where you are, if all of that were just taken from the ship and just reconstructed down on a planet, would you be willing to step onto that teleporter? Because for me, there's at least a small part that can't help but think that the moment I step on there, my existence ends, and then, you know, there's a duplicate existence who knows everything I know, thinks everything I used to think, remembers everything I remember, but it's not me piloting that.
Well,
I love that you brought this up, because this is like, of all of the different like philosophical like little questions that poke at you with Star Trek, like this is the one that Eric has latched onto. Like the transporter is like, you were like, yes, this is my thing now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I speak for myself in this.
I speak for the trees.
So this is only going to take you so far, but I'd love to give you my view on it. My view on it is this. Yeah, you stop existing. But it's not like you're ever going to know that you stopped existing, because you stopped existing. The fact is, effectively, you transported. That consciousness is there. It's kind of this amazing. So, you know, it's interesting. I think that if I lived in a world where the technology existed, if I was having a really bad day, I would just go transport myself to the other room. Because what an amazing way to take care of your existential dread than to go, no, that person was just obliterated. But this one, maybe I can give this one a chance, you know. but even if we took it out of the transporter problem, I mean, we're still looking at the ship of Theseus.
Yeah,
right.
It is essentially the same thing.
Yeah. And so for people who are watching who haven't heard of the ship of Theseus, I'll just go through it really quickly. It's this idea that, you know, Theseus has a ship, and it's been hundreds and hundreds of years since. And
they love this ship, so they preserve it.
Yes.
And every time a plank starts rotting out, they replace it with a new plank. Every nail, every sail, every sheet, like everything. They slowly but surely make sure that everything is new and everything is maintained.
And so now we're looking at a ship of Theseus, and it's hundreds of years later, and it looks beautiful. It's sitting in the harbor, but somebody had actually kept all of the pieces that were replaced, all of the rotted pieces, and reassembled a ship of Theseus. Are they both the same ship? Is one more the ship of Theseus? The idea of identity is so weird. It's so interesting. The fact that, you know, we're constantly losing cells and regenerating, the idea that you're not the same person that you were several years ago. I would say that it's not so much about your physical makeup, because that changes.
Right.
I think that when you're talking about your identity, you're talking about the set of stories that you tell yourself about yourself. That is who you are. And that changes over time. But I think that if you want to get to the core of what makes you you, I think that's what it is. Is it wiggly? Is it? Yes, absolutely. But I've yet to come across something that has a more powerful, strong pull as that for me. And so when I imagine that I hopped into the teleporter, those stories, that person, that human, didn't stop existing for everybody else. I never found out that I stopped existing, and that consciousness continues to exist. So here's the real question, Jay. Who's to say that when you fell asleep last night, you didn't die and get replaced?
There's absolutely nothing to say that.
So
I mean, logically, there's no way we could ever know that.
No.
I mean, I've had surgery before I put out, and when I was out, it was just nothingness. I was one moment, then all of a sudden I'm slowly waking up in the hospital, and that time is just gone.
So I would say actually the transporter problem and this whole question of are you you and what maintains yourself after you get reassembled kind of pushes us in the direction that it's not a supernatural thing. Because if your brain is constructed in a certain way and that's what makes you you, if you reconstruct that brain exactly, it's going to still be you because that's the function of that particular brain.
Yeah.
So it's not that something supernatural follows you along for the ride and re-inhabits your body once it's regenerated. What happens is it reconstructs your brain, and your brain is what makes you you. So of course you're going to be you because you just rebuilt your brain atom for atom.
It's this beautiful, nebulous, amazing thing.
It's such a fun question,
isn't it?
And I get it. I get it's weird, and it defies like all of the common sense concepts that we have about things. So of course there's going to be the predilection, especially in a culture where the supernatural is proposed as an option. That oh, maybe this is supernatural. Maybe that's why I can't grasp it. Maybe that's why it's difficult to understand. But that's not necessarily the case. It's not a easy to understand, common sense, concrete thing or supernatural. Like that's a false dichotomy. It could be that it is a completely, and it looks like it is a completely physical, tangible, like actual physical, real process that we just don't quite grasp yet.
Well, and I mean, and it's easy enough. We can go back to the Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan, and I keep going to Star Wars. We're talking about Star Trek. I'm going to get murdered in the comments.
Please.
Let's. So if we go back to Star Trek, if your brain was put back together wrong, you know, if you came back as Tuvix, you're a different person, right? It is that physical thing. So anyway, oh, somebody mentioned Tuvix.
Yep. Yeah, he's already seen the episode with Tuvix. In fact, you saw Tuvix before you started watching Voyager. Like that was an episode that you saw with me before you started.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully that helps. I mean, yeah, it's the supernatural element of it, you know, boils down to, is there something outside of the physical that is left for supernatural? No, not really. You know, and the identity piece, yes, it has to do with your brain, but that doesn't mean that your brain couldn't be reassembled the exact same way, and that would be that identity.
Right.
And because of that, it just makes us a whole lot less special, doesn't it? That's all it is we're just not these unique, amazing snowflakes. That it's just, and that's okay. That's okay. So anyway, you, sir, thank you for calling in.
That was a good conversation.
We had some real deep cuts there. I don't know how many people we lost, but that was worth having. Jay, thank you for calling in, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
For sure.
I could talk about that for days.
I know it's.
And I do. The idea, like some mornings I really would love to wake up and teleport.
Like instead of a shower, myself, just like transport yourself
to the shower. Yeah, just from the bedroom to the shower, just so I can maybe give this Eric a shot. You know, for some reason, part of that just feels amazing.
I don't know. I think I'd be even more existentially like depressed if it followed me to my next iteration.
But then you can tell yourself like that one's gone. I don't know.